Hello, you're very welcome to another episode of The Big Interview. This time our guest is Tim Sherwood, a Premier League winning captain with Blackburn Rovers, a championship winner with Portsmouth R8, also somebody I love listening to on radio and television because Tim tells it as it is. We're about to take you inside Blackburn Rovers in 1995, one of the most remarkable Premier League stories of them all. It'll be starring King Kenny Dalglish, Alan Shearer, but who needs him when we've got David Speedie? All will become clear. And a fair few midfield battles with some 90s legends. If you were a big fan of Manu Petit's coiffure and grooming, look away now. Here's Tim. Tim Sherwood, thank you for joining The Big Interview. Everybody that listens already knows that I only speak to people who I admire. Success hasn't been enough to get them on this podcast. And amongst the many things that I admire about you is, well, let me set the scene. September, something like 1974, I'm at Pittodrie, Aberdeen Football Club. Our big ginger centre-half is so pissed off with our manager that he's been substituted. He whips his top off, runs over to the dugout, throws it in his face. A week later, he's playing for Spurs. But by the time you are regularly watching football at the club you support, Willie Young is centre-half for the team that you loved then. So I'd like you to start this interview by telling me two things. One, the feel and the smell of walking up towards Highbury, the stadium that is one of the most beautiful was in the world, but it's gone now. So a lot of people listening never experienced that. And two, once you get in there in your North Bank, were you quite confident in Willie Young's ability, or were you one of those who thought, yeah, we can do better than big Willie Young?
As a supporter?
Yeah.
I like Willie Young. I remember him, I think he's famously mooned, didn't he, to the North Bank or the Clock End once. Arsenal were a massive side, not a history, and Willie Young was part of that, you know, a smaller part as he possibly could be. But I remember a lot of players. When I'm a North London boy, you know, you either supported Tottenham or you supported Arsenal, and I loved football, and I used to watch them both. I mean, I could tell you the history of Tottenham, I could tell you the history of Arsenal.
You supported Spurs, but you went and watched them both?
I would watch. I just watched football. My dad was an Arsenal fan, you know, and he still goes now. He goes to the Emirates to watch Arsenal play, and you know, unfortunately, he's obviously took the wrong path in life somewhere along the line, and unfortunately, I never followed him.
It was just because of the football?
Not really. A lot was made of that because I played for Tottenham, and they always try and find a reason or where was his allegiances, and mine was always love of football. I love Liam Brady. I loved him. I loved Glenn Hoddle, you know, equally. You know, I just liked the technicians, the make the difference players, and they were two.
Well, in those midfields, you had Ricks and Brady, in that era you're talking about, and as well as Glenn, and I don't know when you started, but Ozzy was there, which it was 2 interviews ago for us.
Yeah.
World-class man, world-class chat.
Yeah.
World Cup winner. But Mickey Hazard too, which people forget.
Yeah.
How outstanding a footballer Mickey Hazard was.
He was. I mean, they had so many good technicians. It was just a imprint, when it was the DNA of Tottenham to have them types of midfield players, and you had to have them. Yes, they had the Steve Perrimans, you know, the push and run and the hard tackling organisers, but they had the likes of Mickey Hazard and obviously Glenn Hoddle, John Moncur after that a little bit later on. Obviously Gascoigne was like the best player I've ever played against in my life. But I've got a lot of admiration for that, and they had a typical way of playing. That was Tottenham's DNA, and everyone realised that. Yeah, they got tarnished with this being a soft touch. You know, they never had enough tough guys, and George Graham come in obviously when I was there, and tried to change all that mentality. But
won a trophy.
He did.
You know,
he did win a trophy, and we had the semi-final of the FA Cup as well a couple of times, and got beat by Arsenal at Old Trafford, and then Newcastle at Old Trafford. So, Yeah, he was very close to winning another trophy as well. I mean, George was a winner. George knew how to win. You know, it's very similar to the man they got in there at the moment, Tottenham. You know, they brought him in for a reason, not to finish in the top 4, although that would be a priority for Daniel Levy this season. I'm sure of that. But to raise the profile of the club, because he's a proven winner, as George was when he was down the road at Arsenal, and ultimately take the club to another level.
So haul it all back, because unless, like, you can't remember, it didn't make an impact on you like it did on me. Talk us through approaching Highbury, approaching the old White Hart Lane as a kid or as a youngster. The sounds, the smells, the noise, the anticipation, what it cost to get in, why you were doing it, what it was like, whether it was North Bank or on a shelf, whatever. Bring that era. Must be talking middle to late 70s, are we?
Yeah, I was born in 69, so I would have started going pretty much. Wouldn't have been double figures, you know. I would have been 5 or 6, and my dad would have took me to whatever game we could have got a ticket for. Just remember going there, you know, and the crowds and everyone above you, and your dad pulling you in different directions. And I remember once I was at Highbury, and my dad still does it to this day. We have to go and watch the warm-ups. We watch the whole game, and we do not leave until the final whistle goes. Never. I mean, he finds it extraordinary that people leave before the end of the game. He cannot fathom that out. And you always had the smells, you had the badges, didn't you? It's very unusual for a kid to have a badge of Tottenham and another one of Arsenal, you know, and then the Nottingham Forest one, because I used to go up there a few times, and because it was very successful at the time as well. And
they were about to win
history.
Back-to-back European Cups, weren't they?
But even when Cloughy was there, they were a cup side, weren't they? Yeah. And it was always very good to watch. And my mum had a friend who was a Nottingham Forest season ticket holder, and he used to take me, you know. So I used to just want to go and watch football. I just love it. Watch it on telly, and if I could get to go to a live game, I would always go. When
you were at the Arsenal, was that woman who would, "Come on Arsenal, come on you Gunners"? There was a woman who used to shout all the time.
She would have been. I remember her when I played, and she screams when the ball gets towards the opposition goal. So whenever I played at Highbury, always, you know, I knew we were going in the right direction if she was screaming.
We are very lucky. We've got sponsors at Bet365. They've sent you 3 questions. I'll ask you one. If you could have one managerial job, you rule, nothing about agents or chairman or nothing. If you could have one managerial job, what would it be?
Now?
Yep.
You know, I'm tempted to say take over from Pep, but I mean, how can you do any better? Difficult one. You're normally going to pick a team which is underachieving so much. I would probably go and manage Manchester United now. That's
a really good answer. Why did you choose them?
Biggest club in the world, in my opinion. Obviously, I'm biased because I'm English. I think it's such an underachieving job. A difficult one, of course. Yeah. I'm not saying it's an easy job, but I would have belief that I could make some improvements and send them in the right direction. And if you do get it going, you know, support and the worldwide support of Manchester United is second to none.
Is in general in your life, because footballers and football managers are usually quite practical. Where will I win? How are the wages? Will we lift a trophy? But some people are swayed by allure. So, for example, a guy I know you watch a lot and think a lot about, Guardiola. And people listen to this know sorry City fans, he wanted to go to United. He was amazed that Ed Woodward didn't make a big push for him in his second season at Bayern Munich. Yeah. Throughout his life, as much as he's a practical man, he would have watched Sexton's United and Greenwood's United and on from there through the Ferguson era. And it was partly, like you said, I think he thought about revitalising or taking it on from Alec. Also, he was really swayed by the history and the atmosphere and the passion and Old Trafford, where he'd played, which you've played at too. Is that part of your dream answer? Or is it simply like, it'd be a really good salary, I can do better there, and it'd be fun to work at the biggest club in the world? Because one's practical and one is romantic.
No, it's the whole package. It's the history of the club. The success what they've had over the years, the fan base is bigger than any. the history of bringing through younger kids as well and having that leeway to be able to do that. I always say at the moment, Ollie looks to me like, and I know it's a tough job and no one's cracked it after Fergie, but he's looking like he's trying to develop the kids without having the good experienced pros around them, and it's very difficult to
that,
do.
to give them
The kids can only be as good as their experienced players, and their best players at the moment are possibly their younger kids. Mm-hmm. So he's ticking that box, but he's trying to put decorations on a tree before he's got a tree. There's no foundation there, and he needs some foundation. He needs a little bit of help, obviously, with the recruitment, but ultimately he needs to find an identity of the club again, because they've lost their identity over recent years. How do they play? It's difficult for me to say to Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, I can go and scout for you, because I don't know how he wants to play. So if you had an idea of that, and I think Manchester United have to have one way of playing and everyone worries about them. And I think they've come away from that, and they seem to be worried about how to stop the opposition rather than impose themselves on the opposition.
Well, I'll come back. I was going to ask you about you now, but I can't avoid the temptation you give me, because one of the other things that I've always admired about you is your eye for a footballer, your understanding. You're ahead of the curve. You're either harder working or quicker to see. Doesn't matter which it is. But you used a phrase there about you couldn't scout for Ollie because you don't see the way he wants to play. But you can only play, if you're a young manager like that, a relatively inexperienced manager, a certain way if the club gives you the right resources. And at the moment, again, I'm sorry to be rude on tape for anybody that's suffering, but whatever Ed Woodward's good at, he's got no clear strategy, he's got no clear knowledge, he's just chasing the honeypot every time, and your nose and your hands get sticky. And he shouldn't be doing that job. And there are very few people in positions of influence in England, in my opinion, whether it be ex-players, ex-managers, current in the industry, journalists who are loudly saying that for whatever reason, self-interest, or they don't want to put their head above the parapet. But you have to tell the truth in football. That is their principal problem. Yeah,
I think Ed Woodward would admit himself he needs help in that department. I think it's a strength to go and find expertise in certainly player recruitment, because that's going to help him out long term. It's going to help out the manager if it's Ollie for the long term, wherever it is. You know, at the moment they seem to have a scattergun approach regarding their scouting, who's available, whereas years ago, and I still believe it's still a big pull, Manchester United Football Club, but there would have been a queue round the block for anyone to go there, and whether this club A is another club and they will pay you more, but Club B is Manchester United, and you're not going to get quarter less of the wages. You're going to go to Man United still, because it's the pull of playing for Man United.
If you're our age.
But it's different now.
If you're a 20-year-old Brazilian, that isn't going to be true anymore.
But I think they need to get back to that, and I still think it's a huge pull. And I think Ed Woodward, he's out of sight. But he's a commercial manager of Manchester United, so it wouldn't be the hardest job in the world. But what I'm saying is, I think he should bite the bullet, go and get some help, and get some recruitment people, football people, into that football club who haven't got a hidden agenda.
That's a nice phrase, and that needed saying too. That needed saying. Because this is the big interview, I get to decide how we flit around like a butterfly, so it's back to Tim Sherwood, the player. You once used a phrase, and I'd like to understand it a little bit more, because then everybody listening, whether they saw you or they didn't see you in midfield, will understand you a little bit better. You talk about Dave Williams at Norwich, and you talked about a penny dropping moment when Dave Williams said, what are we going to see today? What Tim Sherwood can do for Tim Sherwood, or what you can do for the team? You reckoned then that he was right and you were playing for yourself. Describe that, Tim Sherwood, what Williams was trying to get through to you, and why things changed or had to change.
Yeah, I left Watford. I played at Watford where I was an apprentice. So I've been there full time since I was 16 years of age. There was a lot of different turnarounds in managers then, and I remember playing a lot of games in quick succession there, and then all of a sudden I get an opportunity to go to Norwich. When I went to Norwich, it was completely different. The way we played, we were very much direct at Watford, getting the ball back to front very quickly. It was an old Graham Taylor way of playing.
You'd beaten Chelsea and Manchester City in the space of 2 games.
Yeah.
It was a winning side, playing with Johnny Barnes. It was as much as it was long. There was a lot of quality there.
Quality. I mean, they'd finished second in the old Championship, which is the Premier League back then. So, yeah, there was, but it was a different way of playing. When I went to Norwich, and they were a tippy-tappy side, it was sophisticated, and Williams was one of the coaches. And he was a good coach, but he was still a good player. So when I was trying to get fit and get used to the way they were playing, I played with him in midfield in the reserve games. And he was still excellent. He was like a Welsh international, but he was technically a gifted player. And I remember I'd been there a month, and I thought, I was playing in the first team, and I was thinking, how is Dave Stringer, the manager, playing me in front of these guys? Because in training, I couldn't touch the ball. It was just going round me. But obviously games are not like training, and I was feeling my feet, and I started to score a lot of goals. And I started to score goals by pretty much relinquishing my defensive duties and playing off the front, and I was effective. And it was almost, I was undroppable at one stage. I was scoring enough goals from midfield and getting the headlines on the back of the paper. Other teams started showing a lot of interest, because with respect to Norwich, I didn't want to stay there for the rest of my career because I wanted to go to a bigger club. And that is what Dave was talking about. He identified it as I would identify it in a younger player. I was playing for myself, for my future, and not for the team. There was a lot of things I could have done better for the team, but it was self-indulgence. It was about me trying to improve me and to make other people look at me and hopefully twist their arm to come and take me to a higher level.
Were you already quite clear about that in your head?
Yeah.
Or is that retrospectively you realise that?
It worked for me. But it probably, I know now it wasn't the best thing for Norwich at the time. Not that it mattered where we finished in the league, because we were pretty much, they were pretty good. I mean, they were pushing. I remember when I did eventually go to Blackburn, they were top of the league and we were second. And we beat them 7-1 at Ewood Park, and I scored a goal. And it was almost like, I think I made the right decision here, and it was a sliding doors moment for me to go there. But I admire that, and I always remember, and I always tell the young kids when I was doing the development phase, certainly at Tottenham, I always remember that quote, and I always tell them that I've been there, and the penny did drop, and thankfully it did, but you only learn when you get the experiences of life, and certainly Dave Williams gave me a shock to the system just by that little quote.
When you were scoring those goals, did you have what they call in Spain llegada? Llegar is to arrive, and it's somebody who arrives in and around the box with what appears to be outstanding timing. What to the amateur eye, you're like, God, he's got some internal GPS. And we asked Gus Poyet about this because he had that. Yeah. When we were growing up, maybe David Platt was famous for, he could strike the ball, but seeming to just arrive in and around in space, or run when somebody wouldn't go with you. Did you have that?
I think I did at a time. I had good anticipation, good knowledge of players. So I would know, I've trained every day with my teammates, so I would know if someone's got the ball on the right side of the box, there's a good chance they might scuff it to the back post rather than drive it in the near post. So you be there and you take the gamble, I think the most dramatic player of that is Frank Lampard. I mean, Frank's anticipation and knowledge of others and where that ball might land is better than anyone's. So yeah, I had it, and I played different roles, but I used to enjoy that. Obviously, everyone wants to score goals and not necessarily want to do the shit things in the game, But unfortunately, when you learn that it has to be done, and you have to do it for the team. But I learned that a little bit later on in my career.
One of the things that must have affected, because you talked about Blackburn, must have affected what happened to you is really early on at Norwich, you play Liverpool twice in quite a short succession. And each time it's 0-0. And the manager's Kenny Dalglish. Do you remember either of those games? And when you subsequently start working for Kenny, who I'm going to ask you a lot about, did he ever tell you if he noticed you in them games or if it was subsequent games? Those 2 0-0s were way back in 89, 90, when you're still quite a young player, quite an inexperienced player. And they look like, from this distance, as good as Norwich were then, pretty big results. Do you remember them? Do you remember the challenge of playing Liverpool under Kenny?
I remember a game when I think we beat Liverpool 2-0 in one game. I think it might have been. I I don't know, that my mind plays tricks on me. But I do remember, obviously a big game, because I'm grown up with that Liverpool side, and when you used to travel to Anfield and you pull up on the bus and the crowd never used to give you the 2 fingers or the 1 finger, they used to give you 5, and on the other hand was a 0, and then just shaking your head. And I used to look out the window and say, yeah, we'll take that.
I was going to say, that wouldn't have put you off too much.
That's what they used to do. They just shake their head as you're pulling in and just give you 4-0 or 5-0. And we used to look at each other and say, we'll take that.
Yeah.
Get out of here.
You'd have been up against Ronnie Whelan, Steve McMahon, against your ex-teammate Johnny Barnes. These are the 2-0-0s when Dave Stringer's still picking you ahead of everybody else. And, those games must have influenced Kenny when he thinks, OK, how am I going to build a title-winning team at Blackburn? I'm absolutely certain about it. A couple of interviews ago, we sat down with Charlie Adam. And Charlie told us about the process of being signed for Liverpool by Kenny Dalglish. Because I think Kenny phones him up and says, right, we'll have a chat about this, come round to my house. And he pitches up and Kenny's in his pyjamas on the couch watching golf and says, listen, kitchen's in there. Make me a cup of tea, toast in the bread bin or whatever. And Charlie's like, I'm talking to the all-time legend of Scottish football. He's sitting there in his pyjamas, in his dressing gown, feet up, watching the golf, and I'm making tea in his... Was that anything like your introduction to Kenny Dalglish?
I remember went to speak to Arthur Cox. He was manager of Derby.
Derby County, yeah.
I went up there with my agent at the time. It was Eric Hall, Monster. Now, Eric was great. I used to love Eric because he entertained me. He was good entertainment, and back then it was just when the club started paying agents, and so I didn't have to pay him anyway. So I thought I'll keep him on toe and he'd let him get a.
For everybody
everyone's got to eat.
He's about Danny DeVito size, shaven black hair, a cigar that's bigger than his head.
Yeah.
Larger than life in terms of noise. He'd come from rock and roll. I think he'd come from the music business.
He worked with Elton John, didn't he, and all them guys. I think he worked with EMI Records with Elton when they used to stack shelves together, and obviously they went in different directions, And Eric's still about now. Yeah. I mean, he's still about now. But I remember him taking me to Derby to meet Arthur, and I said to Arthur, I shook his hand and said I would join Derby. On the train on the way back, Kenny Dalglish rings Eric, and I knew he was talking to someone. I didn't know who it was, and then he passed the phone over to me, and Kenny then started giving me the sales pitch on Blackburn.
What was the pitch?
It was, we're going to build something here. I wouldn't be coming unless it was something exciting, and obviously it's Kenny Dalglish. I mean, I've seen him twist up them Arsenal and Tottenham defences down the years, and what a legend of a player he was, and a winner of a man. It would, because I was in awe of people like that. If they've been a player and then you go to the club and then you start judging them as a coach and as a manager. But initially, it opens your eyes and you do get influenced. And he no bullshit, Kenny. I mean, he's a straight talker. I mean, everyone knows that. He's a very intelligent guy, and no one pulls a wool over his eyes. And he just give it to me straight. And I said to him, I've got a problem because I've told Arthur I'm going to join Derby. So he said, well, we want you here. Have a little think about it. If you want to come to us, then we'll see you tomorrow. So it was as simple as that.
When he said a little think, he wasn't saying take a week.
Yeah, but he obviously, it was a thing where he didn't. Kenny's like, it wasn't about go and talk to your family, go and see you there, see where you want to live. It ain't about that. Kenny just thinks, we're Blackburn, I'm here as a manager, we're building something, we're better than Derby, who's your other option, so what have you got to think about? Basically, that is what he's saying.
That's
without
how he
saying
thinks.
it.
That's definitely how he thinks.
So he's thinking that it's all about the football. It's not about your life. It's not about if you want to go and live up north in Blackburn or you would rather go to Derby. It's not about that. It's about what we're going to do on the pitch, because that should be your life. You have to be married to the game, in his opinion. And he was right. So I put the phone down on him and I said to Eric, what am I going to do? So he said, what do you want to do? I said, I'm going to Blackburn. I said, but how are we going to tell Arthur? All of a sudden the phone rings. Arthur speaks to me, says, you had the big man on the phone. I said, who? He said, Kenny, the king. I said, yeah. I don't know how he knew. And whether Kenny's probably rung him and just said, listen, he's probably done the gentleman thing and said, look, I know you've spoken to him, but we have as well. So he said to me, if I'm your son and I want to guide you like my son, I will tell you to sign for Blackburn. Because that is going to be a different level of club to where we are. And why it was such a sliding doors moment is the fact that we played Derby in the semi-final of the playoffs to get into the Premier League, and that we knocked them out and beat Leicester in the final. So it could have gone such a different direction.
Even before the pitch and the playoffs proved that you made the right decision. Tell me I'm not wrong, and in fact, I know I'm not wrong, and you're an honest guy. People don't think or speak like that in football very often. You talked about playing for yourself because there was a purpose and it was natural. But in football, everybody thinks really just about themselves. The people who do what Arthur Cox did to you are in a very small percentage. Am I right or am I wrong?
No, absolutely. I think more then. Now it's completely changed. Yeah, I think everyone's out for themselves. So I think back in that day then, I think people
They're more like that.
More up front. And I think that is, in the end, and Kenny was that type of man as well, even with his management style. And I think I learned that when I went into management, I was very upfront with the players. I mean, if they wanted to talk to me about why they weren't playing, I wouldn't sell them a story. I wouldn't make up. Basically, you're picking a team to win a football match, and the one in front of you is better.
It's better. So first times with Kenny then, once you make the decision, his manner, first of all, I mean, this is not... Do you understand everything?
It was difficult at first. I mean, you have to be in front of him to understand, and he's such... he's dry.
Dry.
He's dry and quick-witted. He's got that humour, and we clicked straight away. Even though when I went there, I was carrying a hernia, and I was terrible, no good whatsoever. And I remember him backing me in the press, and he said they asked him why that he had signed me, and he said, "I've signed him to play in the Premier League." He said, because when we signed him in the Premier League, and he gets better players around him, then he'll be the player that I've signed.
Good eye. Great eye.
Similar, I feel, and a lot of people are reminding me, is he took Jordan Henderson to Liverpool.
It took me a couple of seasons to understand. I also think Jordan has improved. His distribution wasn't as good as his other skills, I swear. But I think he has developed. But I didn't understand it first. I have to admit.
But I just think that you've got to understand that when you're building a side to win a title, you're not all going to be superstars.
No.
It's a jigsaw, and certain qualities of what Henderson had is similar to what he can make people better without him playing well himself, because he's got a personality. Mm-hmm. And I think it's even harder now for likes of Jordan Henderson, because he's dealing with a lot of foreign players who are coming in, and they don't know how to take straight talking. But I think that he's introduced that, along with James Milner, into their
another
cycle.
guest on this, James is different class. Like a complete dedication to being the best, to winning. Okay, funny too, bright mind, speaking to his kids in Spanish, witty, but passionate about football, passionate about winning. Brilliant, like standards every day, every hour of every day standards. That's not the norm.
When I was coaching at Tottenham, I was in the gym once, and I won't name the players, but there was 3 players standing around the bikes and treadmill messing around or whatever they were doing. They kept talking about busy this and busy this and busy that. And I said, "Who are you talking about?" And they said, "James Milner." I said, "What do you mean? Why is he busy?" He said, after training in England, he's takes a sack of balls out there, and he's at a... I said, "Why is he busy?" So they said, he's just doing it because he wants... I said, "No, he's doing it because he wants to be the best." I said, "He's doing it because he wants to be busy playing when he's 45 and you've not working anymore." And I said, "That's why he's doing it." I said, "It's nothing to do with him trying to be the teacher's pet or whatever. He wants to be the best." But he wouldn't be worried. James wouldn't be phased of that. He knows he's doing the right thing. He ain't worried about them. Well, because some of them have retired now. He's still playing, he's still going strong, and he's going to pick up another Premier League title. So who's laughing?
So people will have forgotten that when you get King Kenny, and the thought of King Kenny persuading Eric Munster Hall, or even sharing a phone call, 2 more different people, I cannot possibly imagine. But you do what you have to do to get your captain and your leader. People who don't remember will have forgotten that you were taking a risk, because Blackburn maybe are building, but they've still to go up, don't they?
Yeah. I was a step down in leagues, but I was confident in the...
It's like you talked about arriving in the box. Risk, you take a risk.
Yeah, but I knew he wasn't telling me lies. Some people can tell you can sign a player and we're going to sign this one, that one, and they're selling you a story. I knew from Kenny it wasn't a story. I knew that he was built because he'd gone there himself. I mean, he's put himself on offer by leaving. You know, he's managed the biggest clubs in the world.
David Speedie, hat-trick in the playoff semi?
Derby, was it?
Derby, was it?
He scored in the final.
He scored in the final.
In the penalty, yeah, he dived. I think he dived to earn the penalty in the final. And he would be first to admit that.
He was cruelly taken down. Then, for the benefit of our listeners, I'd like to know a little bit about David Speedie and playing with him, but also about a guy who I thought at Villa was top class. He's called Sid by everybody. His real name's Gordon Cowans. Can you paint a picture of either of those two guys and working with them or playing with them?
I stayed in the hotel up there. It's called the Duncan House, and they stayed in there. And I didn't realise it was possible to drink as much on Thursdays and Fridays before playing on the Saturdays. And we used to come in on a Friday and play a five-a-side, and it was such an intense five-a-side. Kenny played; he was the best player, but Kenny would pick his team against the rest, and it was so intense. It was a kick fest. I mean, it was so rough and tumble, and Kenny knew if they were drinking or any of us. He knew. I mean, he knows all the tricks. He knows people when we're training, we're out on the training field, whoever's standing downwind of him, you know, it's a good chance you're trying to hide something. And he used to call Gordon sucking mince Cowans. So it was quite obvious to me that I said, he's on to you. Because he's like, no, why wouldn't he be? I said, he's on to you, I'm telling you, he ain't silly. He knows. Anyway, but these performances, Gordon was the fittest guy ever. One-paced, yes, right? But technically, the friend of the football, the range of passing he had, the leadership qualities by not talking, you know, and us just looking at him and knowing how gifted he was, and a winner, won the European Cup. I think it was because of that, the history of what he's done. But his application, yes, he liked a good time, and yes, he liked it a pint like we all did. But when it come time to work, he worked, and he worked hard, and he would never be. He knew if he'd been out on the Thursday or whenever he'd been out or whenever, he knew he had to be at the front, and he was always at the front. And he was always working harder than everyone else. And he was a great one to follow, and all the boys followed him. And Speedy was completely different. He was his own man. He would smash anyone in training, and that's what made him such a good player. I've never seen a player win so many games for us. I remember there was a banner when I first went there. There was a banner saying, "Why we don't need Shearer, we've got Speedy." Yeah, and Speedo used to say, "Oh, I had that when I come in here from Simon Garner." He said, so they always had this striker. So Simon Garner was a legend up there, and he's still around when I went there. And then Speedy come in. So he said, I've been through this. And then when Shearer came in, it was almost like, we don't need Shearer, where's Speedy? You know, but his goals he scored with his head. You know, he's to come across people. And when you look at the mess of the defenders after, he used to jump and elbow them in the, you know.
So it was fearless, but it was also a raw aggression that you aren't allowed today at all.
Yeah.
But it was totally fearless. But I always thought as well, because he wasn't big.
No.
His sense of timing, both in the leap, but when to make those runs, when he might catch somebody out. Like you said, maybe it was partly because he knew about the delivery, but he seemed to have just an absolute, I don't care what it costs, I'll get to that first, which... But I can't think of anybody who plays that way.
It takes you by surprise. So he come really quick and really late with his headers. Like the defender thinks he's already heading it, and then all of a sudden something comes across the face of him, and he's just glancing it in. I mean, he was incredible. I mean, he was a massive part of the promotion push. Massive. I mean, he was integral, almost as integral as Shearer was when we won the Premier League. I mean, it was incredible what he contributed to that.
To footballers like Speedy, not just him, when you're in a dressing room, when you're on a team bus going to a difficult ground, do they make you think differently about the prospect ahead? Do they make you think, well, whether he's having a good day next to me or whether I'm on a, hernia's playing up or I've had a bad night or whatever it is, Speedy will do something or Speedy will win us. Does that change your mentality? That trust thing about like, yeah, we've got a pirate in our team. We've got a bat.
It does, yeah, because you know the opposition are thinking that way as well. Yeah. And then when they're lined up in the tunnel against you, looking across, they're like thinking, well, they've got some armoury here. They got players. And we that grew at Blackburn. I think we obviously we finished fourth and then second, and we won the league. So that fear factor for the opposition grew, and they started looking at all of us like that, And it's a good feeling to have, because I've done that down the years. We're lined up against that Liverpool side or that Man United side, and when it come a little bit later on.
Who did you find in the game you could put off the game with? I don't know, a nasty tackle, a snarl. Who did you think? Either this team or this, I don't care if you do or name the person, but who did you know?
Emmanuel Petit.
Now you surprised me.
Obviously, I knew the history of this derby, Arsenal-Tottenham, because I knew nothing else.
You'd lived it.
Yeah. And I couldn't have kissing and cuddling in the tunnel before the game, and even when they show it on the big screen, and you're seeing and they're all talking to each other, they're all French internationals. And I just used to wind me up. They were better than us in that time at Tottenham. So I used to say to the boys, we need to find an edge. So I used to start from the moment we walk out of the dressing room. And I used to abuse him like you wouldn't believe. Like, I'm going to do this to you, I'm going to do that. And I used to say the same to Patrick. And Patrick used to look forward and as if I wasn't even there. And I don't even exist in his life. But Emmanuel could not help but respond. And I knew... I say you're a good listener. I knew I had him, and I knew I was taking him off his game because he was a top player.
That's why I said I was surprised, because he wasn't a chicken. He could really use the ball. At his best, he was a decent athlete, maybe not super quick, but he got up and down, and he seemed to like English football. So
yeah,
you caught me out with that one.
He was a monster. When he went to, it continued when he went to Chelsea. I remember. We played them. Tottenham-Chelsea is another good derby as well. So we were at White Hart Lane, and I remember he comes into a tackle with me, and I'm a little bit more experienced than him, and he flies in, and I just go a little bit higher. But I know I stay on my feet, and the referee, invariably when you stay on your feet, they miss everything. They think it's all about, he's left the floor, that must be a foul. So he's flew in on me, and I've crunched him probably going to do him some damage, and he's rolling around on the floor, and I get the free kick. So he's getting treatment, he's lying on the floor, and I'm going up to him, just reassuring him, and I'm whispering stuff in his ear, and I say, you're going to get more of this, you're going to, and I pulled out his toggle with his hair. So I pulled out the ponytail and I threw it into the West Stand at Tottenham. So his hair is now he's got a lion's mane, and his head is going to explode. So all of a sudden the ankle got better.
I don't remember the game, but this is definitely going to be cards.
He's jumped up off the, and he is physically crying. He's gone to Ginola, and he's saying in English, so I can hear. He said, "David, I hate him." And that was victory for me.
Oh, you're not kidding.
That was victory. But after the game, I would go and straight to Patrick,
it's all fine now. I'm sure
straight to shake his hand.
You doubled up, were you? Like, the best, mate.
Yeah. But Patrick would. I mean, we had so
different
many
species.
But different. Just didn't even acknowledge it. And I've got so many holes on my shins because of him, do you know?
Yeah.
And he's probably ahead.
So amongst the, that league-winning side, I remember the battle as you go up each season and your finishes. The real battle was United.
Yeah.
And there was one, I remember I was out running, listening to it on the radio in the dark, and at Aberdeen, I was there with a little earphone in. I think Kevin Gallagher scores in a 1-0 win there. And that felt like the breakthrough moment, because United had, never mind the traditional rivals, they'd seen you coming. Alec and Kenny, it was bound to be personal. They've had serious ups and downs over the years. Fergie hated Hansen and Kenny were, like Dean and Bing. What was that rival, the whole thing about taking United down, which is what you had to do? What was that like? What was the pressure like? What was the anticipation like? What were they like to play?
It was the only rivalry. can't think of anyone who'd come to the party other than that. It was just them or us.
And for a long time, it's just totally nip and tuck.
Them or us, and there was obviously mind games as well, where they tried to take Alan, didn't they, when Alan came. And
Kenny had tried to get Roy, I think, and United had just got there first.
I remember Jack Walker, when they bid for Alan, he said, yeah, you can have Alan, but we got to have Cantona. As a joke, he knew there was no chance. So he was basically saying to them, why are you bullies? Well, you can't bully me. Why are you trying to bully me? That Alan Shearer is going to win us the title. And thankfully, they couldn't persuade Alan to go there. When Fergie presented him at the awards, Alan got a Lifetime Achievement Award, and Fergie presented it. And Richard Keys was hosting, and he gets him on the stage, and he says to Alan, you're talking about going to Man United. He said, if you would have gone to Man United, you would have won more things. And Alan said, if I would have gone to Man United, he would have won more things. It's a great answer. But I think Alan was he was just integral, wasn't he, for everything we did. And when you look at like Shearer, Batty, Lasso, Flowers, Hendry,
Berg,
Henning, Ripley, Wilcox, all men. And we weren't phased. Right? No matter what they wanted in the game, we would have it. If it was going to be a kicking match or it was going to be a technical game, whatever, we could handle ourselves in that. So we wasn't phased. When we're looking across at Bruce, Pallister, early days were a little bit rough. You got Robson, who's like just a legend in my eyes. I say to people now, Brian Robson could play in the Premier League now and be the best player, best midfield player. He could tackle, he could score, he'd run the game, his physicality. He refereed the game. He did everything. Everyone was in awe of him. He was just brilliant. And I still believe he could play now.
It's underestimated then how good he was because there was less coverage.
Yeah.
The old Premier League thing now compared to, but he's all time.
Just the governor. I mean, he's just unbelievable. But I grew up looking and watching him, and obviously had them. And when he played for England, always seemed to pick up injuries, didn't he? And you could understand when you play against him, you understand why. I mean, he's just so robust. It's all over it. I mean, he would bully you. Technically, he was gifted. He could arrive at the right time. You were talking about earlier about scoring goals. And they built the Manchester United way. There was a way of not only on the pitch, but a way they behaved outside of it. And Fergie almost, and not only Fergie, but likes of Brian and Brucey and Pallister and Dennis Irwin and all these legends there, Sparky, they know Manchester United and they had this swagger and they had this aura about them. But we wasn't phased. We look across in the tunnel.
People
when I was at
talk about
Watford,
it a lot,
yes. When I was at Norwich, yes. When I was at Blackburn, you just look straight ahead because we know they're worrying about us as we're worrying about them. But they've obviously Eric, Kanchelskis. They've got all these players coming through, and then Keno comes and the younger generation. They're all getting taught along the way how to be Man United pupils, and it wasn't just on the pitch, it was off the pitch as well. But we did not feel fazed by them whatsoever.
You've set that up beautifully because, again, for those who either watched you or don't remember it so well, they're aware that you won the title. You've talked a lot about the people in the dressing room and how they matched up to the behemoths, the giants at Old Trafford. Yet you were captain. Why did he choose you?
I don't know. It was really interesting the way he told me. We were in pre-season in Ireland, and Kevin Moran was captain, obviously a legend of the game, great guy. And he called me to his room at the hotel. And when I went into the room, Kevin's in there as well. So Kenny said to me, this old fella's getting a little bit too long in the tooth for it. He's obviously spoke to Kevin. He said he's not going anywhere, he'll be around, but we've had a little chat and we think it might be time for you to start leading out the side. So I said, yeah, I think you're right, I think you're right. He knew he'd get that sort of reaction. So he said, we agree, Kev? And Kevin said, yeah. Because he obviously had Kevin on the inside. Because the captain is the extension of the manager. Not to be a snitch, but just to give them honest views and opinions. So he must have said to Kevin, what's he like in the dressing room?
Yeah.
What's he like around? Is he overawed by the rest of them? We're signing some big name players. And Kevin would have said, not phased. And he probably said the right things. And that is why they made it. It was interesting that they made that transition and that introduction
How they
to
did
captain.
it was strange. That's a strange way to do it.
To
even if it's pre-packed and whatever. Even once you've agreed it to speak like that in front of the outgoing captain, obviously they knew what they were doing, but it's an odd way to do it.
Yeah.
Did you want it previously? Did you have any inkling it might come?
I just didn't think it would change me anyway. I didn't understand what it means. It's not like being a captain of cricket, is it? You know, it's like you're captain, obviously a big honour. You know, so when they start signing Shearers and obviously Hendry was a leader. There was loads of leaders, loads of guys who could be captain, a lot of men of the side, and a lot of players who moved on to other clubs and been coaches and managers and captains elsewhere. But it wasn't, because I had an armband on my arm, it wasn't going to change the way I played or acted. I was going to be the same person anyway.
So it changed nothing in you in terms of you
responsibility.
Think, well, what do I have to do with this? What's it for?
I think it was a good way of. We talked about Norwich, didn't we, the Dave Williams thing, and that was a moment, where a penny dropping moment for me when he said, you know, Tim Sherwood going to do what he can do for Tim Sherwood or what he's going to do for Norwich. And I think Kenny knew there was a little bit of devil in me still, even though I'd realised the penny had dropped that I was actually got this opportunity to play this magnificent game and get paid for it. And it was probably worthwhile me getting the most out of it I possibly could in a Milner sort of style, even though he's gone on to completely different levels of fitness and, what's the right word, his approach and his professionalism to it, he's took it to another level.
He'll do the yoga, he'll eat and drink differently from everybody else. It's a total exclusion of everything else until the career is done. It's monastic.
Yeah.
He's obviously happy.
Yeah.
And it doesn't make him this stupid image of being boring, because he's not.
No.
Very clever, very funny, passionate about the game, tough as anything. You have to also be tough. But yeah, he's still quite unusual. But you needed to, or it helped you go.
I think there was still an element there.
Should we say a bit of Devon or whatever? You're not just talking on the pitch.
No, I'm talking off.
There was a nice bit of living going on.
Yeah. And I think that he would have felt there was an extra responsibility and I would take it on board, and I did.
I've been to the training ground. I seem to remember it's down a windy old lane. I think it used to be a mental hospital or something like that. It's a creepy old place sometimes.
Well, not then. I mean, Kenny was almost left the club by then. When they built Brockle, we trained on a public park.
All right. These are the surprises you get. Okay, I didn't know that.
We trained on a public park. We got changed at the main ground, Ewood Park, which is not Ewood Park like it is now. You know, it was like 2 armchairs and a sofa at the other end. You know, we drove in convoys, filling up cars, 2-3 miles to the training ground. We had to stop training every day to let the funeral procession through, because there was a cemetery through our.
That's true.
Every day we would stop training. Tony Parks, who was a coach up there, he's a Hartford. Other coaches we had, they would have to go early, make sure there's no dog shit on the pitch.
No, I knew that was coming.
And then they cleaned it up. And Kenny used to have that mentality of, and I've heard him say it about Liverpool's training, Melwood. It's not about the facility, it's about people in it. And he's right. It's not about the trimmings. It's about who's actually making it work. And it was we used to know everyone. I would talk to you, and I'm sure you've heard it millions of times. The tea ladies, and we know they were family to us. You know, but Kenny helps to create that environment because he had that environment at Liverpool. And it was an easier task to take it from there.
I don't understand any other way. It has to be like that. It doesn't matter whether they're the person cleaning the shit off the public park, or they're the driver, or they're the guy who, you know, washes the kit or makes the tea. It doesn't matter. They've all got to be pulling in the same direction. It's all got to feel like everybody wants the same thing.
Yeah.
And there's no reason you wouldn't treat them like important people just because they're doing a job that might seem menial or it might seem unimportant because you only see them once a week. I don't understand any other way.
But it's not like that now. That's completely different. I think in Liverpool, I would suggest would be the same.
No, well,
it's easy to be that way when you win.
We've spent a lot of time at Melwood, and it's a lot, and they give you the roam of it. They're overly generous, I think. They're really open, and you'll eat with the players, or you wander about, or different staff will stop and have a chat with you. And you can see that irrespective of him not being brought up in his country, and irrespective of Jurgen not being a Liverpool fan, he absolutely has brought that. Now I've been taught it and saying, this is what we used to do at Liverpool. That's him to a T, and it seems to be making a difference because everybody is on the same page.
But you got that impression Brendan did that as well, though.
Yeah, I believe you, and I certainly we know Brendan. He's agreed to do this interview. He used to talk. He phoned me when he was still at Chelsea. Could he come across and watch Barcelona training because he wanted to learn? And people that work at Celtic now say that he left behind a really good structure at Lennoxtown, the training ground, for Neil Lennon to come back and inherit again. And yeah, I agree with you. And obviously, Brendan's younger than me, but some people are old school in terms of, irrespective of their age, what their values are, what they think will be important to the working atmosphere. Like you say, Kenny said about, because Melwood is still not, all that. And it should be natural that if you're training in a public park, when you've got multi-million-pound players, it should be that it's a distraction. It's too windy. That a dog wants to run onto the pitch, or you spend too much time chasing the ball because there ain't no, fences. And it should have been in theory, it should have been a handicap to you winning the title, and yet it wasn't because of, attitude, the people, the quality.
I think that year '95 we would have just moved in, maybe into there, but it was an integral part. I mean, it was a building process from. I mean, it was quite quick. The development from finishing fourth in the first year of the Premier League in '92 to finishing second, and then that following year we knew we'd win it. It was almost.
At what stage?
Well, we knew we'd win it at the beginning of the season. We felt when we finished fourth. If you would have asked me then, do you think you can win the league next year? I would have said no. Not that Kenny would want to hear that, but I would have thought they're just a little bit too far ahead of us.
There's work to do.
Man United, I just don't think we were ready. But when we finished second. It was all. If you had asked me that pre-season, we'll win it. We'll win it. We'll overturn them this year. We'll win the league.
Because you could feel the gap was narrower.
Yeah, because I feel the belief was there as well. I think there was more belief amongst the squad that we could not only beat them, but we would roll everyone else over.
You said in pre-season you knew, but on the last day of the season, did you know? What was that like?
Horrible. It was the worst ever because we were 12 points clear at one stage, and it was almost like if you didn't want anyone chasing it was Man United. Serial winners, know how to get over the line, great players. Eric done us a great favour, didn't he, by kung fu kicking the kid in Sellers Park. So it was a massive blow to him.
Lost 4 or 5 months, didn't he?
He was just such a character and great for the Premier League, and he was just such an important part of what they were doing, and to lose him for that amount of time, it would be like us losing Shearer.
Yeah.
So it was a massive plus for us. We were I know they appealed the length of the ban. You're glued to the telly hoping that it doesn't get reduced, and thankfully I don't think it was too much. But then we just had to come. Kenny was always like, well, he knew, didn't he? I mean, he knew how to win leagues, Kenny. He knew how to win leagues as a manager, and he knew how to win it as a player. So he was always, well, he's the man. He's been over the line, so let's follow his lead. Why wouldn't you? And that's what we did, and he just kept us really focused, never ever spoke about winning or losing leagues, just one game at a time, always boring shit, cliches, but that's how it was. But then when we started losing, they continued to win, and the gap was closing, you get doubts. And for me, I dream about that time when I'm going to be the first up to lift that trophy, and that could be taken away from me. It was just unthinkable. And it was sleepless nights, and that night, we listened to all that shit. Oh, Liverpool don't want Man United to win it, so they're not going to try. We knew they were going to try. I know John Barnes. I played with him. Jamie Redknapp was my mate. I know all the others. Listen, ideally, if they could pick someone to win the league, they would rather us than Man United. But not
for the next 90 minutes, they're on it.
Any professional player does not. And they've got no pressure on them. They've got nothing to play for. And that makes them even more dangerous. The fans wanted us to win it. The Liverpool fans at Anfield, of course they did. I mean, they would rather Jamie didn't bend that one in, and Johnny Barnes equalising and Jamie bending that one in the last minute. But we played a minute of that game knowing we were champions of the Premier League, which I just walked around.
It's funny because you're not only talented, but you are self-confident and you've got strong character. But it affected you. That's what interests me, that the psychology of, irrespective of knowing, I've got soldiers all around me who are immensely talented. The manager's been the course. But, and like I say, you're not short of a mix of talent and character. Yet in the weeks building up to it, it did get to you.
It get to me, but I couldn't show anyone else. I mean, it got to all of us. So we would all admit that. I think what got to us, the fact that we've had our hands on this. I mean, we've been 12 points clear and someone's pulling them away from us and could take the trophy up the road to them. I mean, it's just unthinkable. So I think that was what it was. I mean, we can suffer. I think when you're ahead, you're so far ahead in a race, for someone to come and catch you, and it's almost your doing. I mean, we're dropping points, we're coming back to them. You know, and they must have rubbing their hands thinking we got them exactly where we want them. No, it was just that thought of, if we didn't win it, we knew full well it would damage us so much we wouldn't win it the next year.
I hear that. I mean, I wasn't fishing for that, but that puts it in context. You're not just thinking about now, but you're like, what happens if?
Yeah.
Then that's for a competitive man.
Yeah. I mean, you still live with that now, wouldn't I? I mean,
yes.
I mean, I do a lot of media stuff now, and they introduce me as Premier League winner.
Does it still sound quite nice?
But yeah, I just don't like talking about it.
No. God, that's how you used to do petite as well, isn't it? You've just done me there when I was preparing to move off with the ball. Can I give you a compliment?
Let me tell you that one. I always think, and I always feel from, and I can't help thinking about Phil Jones's face. That Aguero goal, even though Man United have won it multiple times, that still keeps them up. That Man United celebrating and Aguero scoring against QPR, last kick of the season, they still wake up in the middle of the night. I know, I've been in that position. I know they are not ever in their lives will ever get over that, even though they've won multiple titles.
The scars are big.
Massive.
I'm going to think about them more sympathetically now. I think I remember chuckling on the day. And we've interviewed a lot of people who were in that City team and who we like. And it's a really interesting story about, you know, the psychology of them chucking it away against 10 men, and they think they're going to be in the position you thought you were at Anfield that day. So there's a lot of scarring going on, and maybe some of the City scars aren't completely healed because they still, in their worst nights, dream about, like, did Aguero go in, and did we lose it?
I mean, it's topical at the moment because everyone says, who's the best foreign player because he's breaking all these records and all that. And I always come back to, if you have to give me one last kick of the game and put someone on a chance, he's already shown he can do it. He knows how important that was. He's just got this ice in his veins and this special quality.
But you've just said best foreign, you didn't say best foreign striker. So, like, you know, I'm not the argumentative kind, obviously. And out of respect, you're going to win every argument. But, I mean, come on. How do you even begin to choose? You mentioned Cantona, changed a club, changed the entire league. Did things with his fish and his trawler and his kung fu kick and his practicing and blah, blah, blah. Or, I mean, a giant, Schmeichel. Schmeichel could be, on his day, maybe was the best keeper the world's ever seen. But they're giants. Henry. I mean,
no, they're all great. I'm talking about
strikers.
Someone with a chance in front of goal to put that ball in the net. If I had to have my life on anyone, it would be Sergio.
It's a big compliment.
Foreign.
Big compliment.
Otherwise, I would have Shearer.
I knew that was coming. Not Chris. Yeah, I want to give you a compliment, and I think I mentioned it early on. There was a stage at which, because I enjoy this so much, I can't even remember how we began talking. But I think you were interested in the fact that I was living and working in Spain. And at that stage, you were, you know, quality control at Spurs, making sure that the investment in where players were loaned or how the development was going, or also who should be signed. And it knocked me out, because even in Spain, people weren't really talking about Isco, currently at Real Madrid, multiple 4 times Champions League winner, so he's done quite nicely for himself, can still play a bit. But you spotted him at Valencia reserves. How? Why?
Valencia B team, I watched him 3 times on, I'd have to call the surface ash. It looked like ash. I mean, you know, the pitches are not, I mean, it might have changed now, but it wasn't exceptional.
Yep.
And I went to watch a boy, someone had rung me about another boy, and I think he might have been playing for Seville or someone. And I can't even remember his name, because after 15 minutes, I had no interest in anyone else other than this little kid who looked like a jockey. And I could not take my eyes off him. I couldn't take my eyes off him because the ball was a magnet to him. He knew when to stand still. He had that anticipation, what we spoke about earlier, of getting himself into areas where no one could mark him. He would put the centre forward on a penalty spot with the ball, with the goalkeeper to beat 3 times every game that I'd seen him. I just wanted to continue going back to watch him, and then I wanted to try and find a way that we could take him. I managed to achieve that, find a way we could take him by, I'm not sure of the agent's name now, but he would have been available, and he would have been no more than 500,000 euros. And the club didn't want to do it because they wanted to spend a little budget what they had at that time on first team players. Obviously, I mean, I've got a PhD in hindsight. I mean, it's an incredible. It's an incredible miss.
I remember when you told me and what you told me about him, and I don't know if we are or aren't allowed to say some of the specific things you told me about him, but just leading the horse to water. Your employer didn't fully back you about, like, if this kid's in Valencia B, then he can't be as good as or he can't be worth that.
I think if you said to me, what's like, take away the playing side or biggest attribute I have, I can see a player. And I can watch him, and you have to keep going, you have to double check, but I know that the kid is something special, and I wouldn't want to block up a pathway of any of the youth players, but I knew we had nothing like this.
Yeah.
You know, this is exceptional. It's not getting someone who's just a big athlete and you can produce through your academy. This kid was special, and I'd have to say there was probably in the 3 games I watched him, there would have been 5 or 6 of similar ilk players. I mean, you were breeding them like you wouldn't believe. I remember Pep famously said once when they asked him about Jack Wilshere.
I was sitting there. We've got a dozen like that.
But you have. But
he meant it. He wasn't boasting.
This kid was ridiculous. I mean, his running gait is horrible. I mean, I've got to see him a few times because I followed his career now, and when I spent
his bum does stick out a little bit.
I spent a lot of time in Malaga, and obviously he's from Malaga, and I've seen him a few times there, and I've watched him play there. I mean, it's almost like a waste of time now. I mean, I saw a couple of years ago Tottenham were linked with him, and I think they were linked to him. I was there, or just
Villas Boys wasn't too keen on a 10 that didn't run around like a...
But that time, I went begrudgingly on his behalf to speak to the sporting director at Malaga.
At Malaga, who might have been...
They played Panathinaikos.
I was there. I was at that game.
They played Panathinaikos in the qualifying of the Champions League. Yeah. So I've had a meeting all day with the sporting director, right? If they don't win the game, I think Manuel was there. Pellegrini.
Well, he was the coach.
If they're there, he comes.
Joaquin on one wing, Isco on the other, big Julio Cruz, and then Van Nistelrooy up front, Tulalan in the midfield, Kameni in goals, Jesus Gamas at right back. It was a good side.
Yeah, but he comes to Tottenham. But it was almost like I didn't want it to happen. And the reason I didn't want it to happen is that he'd already missed the boat. I mean, I spotted him 15 million pounds ago. What's the point of taking him in there now? You know, it's almost like, well, why didn't you back me then? Why didn't you trust me? I mean, there's a more dramatic one than that. I mean, Isco is the one I followed.
More dramatic.
And Aubameyang was my...
Oh, really?
I have a guy who's Seamus Brady, who's an Irish fellow, who's an analyst guy, and he used to work for me on the development side, and I took him wherever I go. So I went to watch Sandro. We'd signed Sandro, and I watched Sandro play for Brazil against the Gabon.
Oh, okay.
In Saudi.
Yeah.
Or Abu Dhabi, or wherever it was. And then after 5 minutes, I've seen this kid, like a skinny little kid, like with breakneck pace, like ridiculous, running down a wing for the Gabon. And I used to think, I knew we're not back in them days where you think, well, you go to the African nations and we will nick loads of players because no one knows about them. Because it was almost more modern times when everyone knows about players.
Yeah.
But I thought, this one just might have got through the radar. So I was straight on my phone. I'm in the ground. So I said, this kid, Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang. And I said, Shay, check him out, see where he is. And I was speaking to my analysis guy. He said to me, Tim, he's at AC Milan. He said, yeah, he's on a loan at St Etienne. I said, okay. So I said, I love him, mate. So I spoke to the head of recruitment at Tottenham when I come back. And I said, this kid. He said, no, they always do. Yeah, they don't want to. If you mention a player they don't know, they can't. It's almost like below them. Yeah. No, I know him. Oh, okay, what do you know about him? So I used to put them on the spot because they know, like, I know where the bodies are buried. Yeah, so he goes, well, he's, and he can't wait to get to his phone, yeah, and have a little Google up. No, I've had a report on him and they said that he's got no end product. So I say, he's developing. I say, he's a young kid, he might not. This is probably a good out where I could say, oh, okay, all right, no, but it's worth keeping an eye on because the kid's ridiculous pace. So we only got Gareth. I said, but he's another option. So I said to Daniel, I couldn't help it. I just said, Daniel was a kid I saw the other night. I said, we got to track him and see if we can get him. What does blah blah think of him? I said, he says he knows him. I said, but does he? I said, I think it's worth tracking him anyway. He scored for St Etienne every single week. So I said to the head of scouting there, the kid you're talking about, it must be the wrong kid to what I'm talking about, yeah? I said, because he's scoring so many goals, he's so many assists. I said, as you say, he's got no end product. I said, I'm telling you, this kid, and in a minute, it's going to be too expensive for us. Daniel says to me, get him up. We had a manager there who didn't want him, Villas-Boas. He said to me, get him to come to Tottenham. So I got him with his dad to come to Tottenham, sat there with the chief scout in the old White Hart Lane, executive box looking over the ground. Fantastic. Imagine now he
the player's going to say, yeah,
he was there,
Dad.
come in.
Yep.
And I sold him there and he couldn't understand why the manager wasn't there, which was strange.
It's a fair point, but of
course.
If you're going to come, you're going to what is the splitting the team thinking about me?
But we sold it. I'm a technical whatever, and this way we see.
My respect for the Aubameyang family goes up because their nose is good. Then.
Yeah, but the dad was, he knew how good the kid was and what he could be. It could have happened. I'm not sure what the price would have been, but it wouldn't have been 10 mil. He went to Dortmund, and the rest is history.
You were on the goal line. It must be deeply frustrating when that happens. And from my stance, given your talent, I don't really see why you would go back into coaching and management when that talent that you've patently got and was exhibited to me when you said something on the phone that caught me out about Isco, that's much rarer in football, to be good at that.
Yeah. A lot of the time, though, Graham, I think, is that it's not about spotting them. It's about the development of the player as well.
Okay.
I could spot someone and say, this kid is top drawer, and I could take him into somewhere. Let's use Harry Kane as an example. Would be a good topic, because I've known Harry since he's 12.
Yeah.
He's never a podium player. Never. But he had an attitude which was different. Yeah. And not only that, he was growing physically. And he was a little bit puppy fat, Harry. All of a sudden, it was like streaming off of him. Physically, he was changing. He was getting stronger in his running. But the mentality was still the same. Never, ever wavered. In Harry's mind, he is Lionel Messi in the nicest possible way. And you want him to be. But in the same token, he knows that he can continually improve. And he now doesn't feel like he's got a ceiling. He knows now he can continually improve to get better and better himself. Everyone I loaned him to. The games programme in England, I think we spoke about this before, is no good. They have to play men's football. The Premier League have tried everything they can, but you cannot replicate men's competitive football.
Not enough pressure, not competitive enough.
And they're playing... I could go now, I could play in one of them under 23 games. Though every game looks the same. Whatever game it is, I could tell you how it's going to look and how it's going to pan out. The centre-halves never had the ball, no one ever tackles. It's 1,000 passes for each team. It's boring. You want to leave. There's no competitive nature. So I used to say, no more of that. If we feel like they're good players, we loan them. So I loaned them out to play men's football, whether it be the National League, League 2, League 1, Championship. A lot of them wanted to go.
Problems, you're going to get bruises, you're going to play on bad pitches, the crowd will be on your back, and you develop or you fade.
And it means something.
Yeah.
They do that in League One where the guy's got to pay his mortgage and he needs the win bonus to be able to do that. They're going to get him by the scruff of the neck, up by the wall, and tell him he cannot do that because he's a flash kid from Tottenham and he's this. Harry never had that mentality. He always had that responsibility. We exposed him to men's football, but I'd have to tell you, every club I loaned him to, every manager said he would not be a Premier League player, right? Now, if I listened to them and I took them but I knew, you're absolutely right, he's not a Premiership player now. Will he be a Premiership player? Absolutely be a Premiership player, but could have wrote him off.
What did they doubt, pace or finishing?
Everything. They could. I said to him, I used to ask them, sometimes they ain't got a lot of time. What they haven't got to do, that's the only downside of it, is they haven't got time to develop that individual.
Yeah.
All they're worried about is winning games.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is that you need to try and do it. And I'll say to all development coaches out there, you need to try and do both if you can. Get him to play his games there, but get him a couple of weeks back with you to work at stuff. And we, thankfully, we just managed to balance it out and get that done. And he continually improved, and then he got the games program, which was competitive, and it took him to another level. We
spoke recently to somebody who'd coached him, and pardon me for forgetting him, and he talked a lot about the extra finishing work and the demand to...
Who would that be? Alex Inglethorpe, maybe?
Spoke to Alex. Actually, I was speaking about... I interviewed Trent Alexander-Arnold in Switzerland in the summer, and boy, he talked about Alex and the work he did on him when it was vital that instead of being a midfielder, he would convert to right back. Because I think at the time, Brendan had said, I need a right back. And they'd said, listen, we can make this kid. And he said, Alex put him through hell, but exactly what you've been talking about, to test him, to show him, to teach him, then to assimilate and revise and start again.
Yeah.
And he said it was horrendous.
Yeah.
Trent did.
Yeah.
But he said it made me, and it made me ready.
Yeah.
So they did that within their own system.
Yeah.
Differently. So it was a different manner, but to the same end purpose as you were talking about. But with Harry, it was talking about working on weaker foot, ball in from the side all the time, busy. He had exactly James's attitude. It changed. And I remember talking to Pleaty as well about one day when he saw him playing on loan. I can't remember at Leicester, on loan, and for some reason he was playing at Old Trafford. I can't remember what it was. And Fleet said that he noticed that somehow or other Harry was reading things quicker, therefore he was getting to things quicker. That maybe his pace hadn't changed, but suddenly, because he too had doubted, he admitted that he doubted about whether he'd reached top level or not, and he went, oh, where did that come from? That's a change. How you do that? Well, I suppose it means that Harry's got not just determination, but he's got a decent football brain too, if he's learned how to anticipate better.
And he's had to come through a lot of adversity, that's the thing. I mean, no one ever fancied him at Tottenham. And he knows that. Deep down, he knows Daniel Levy wanted to sell him. He made a good decision not to. Because what they wanted to accept for him, Harry, since he's been 10 at that club, has probably ate as much as that in the canteen. So it weren't even worth it. And the kid was already a better player, but it was Baldini who put it into Daniel's mind. Franco come in and said, this kid is not going to be... Daniel always wanted players, CL. They were going to be Champions League, and Franco told him he wasn't even PL. So I obviously got in between and just said to him, tell me what you can do, what you can't do.
So that's a source of big satisfaction then?
Yeah, he wanted Morata to come in because Morata was a different level to him. And I obviously... We keep talking about sliding doors moment. There was one for Harry Kane. If I don't take the job, he doesn't play for Tottenham. Because, and thankfully for Harry, Pochettino took over after me. Because Pochettino, with the game time as well, took him to another level. If Jose would have come in after me, Harry Kane would never be seen. Because he hadn't rehearsed enough for Jose. He wants ready-made players.
He does.
And it wasn't obvious at that stage that he was going to be what he is now. But
because Jose could do with a word with Dave Williams, because sometimes what Jose's doing is for Jose, not just for the club. It's my opinion, but I'm absolutely sure of it. Well, Spurs then don't just owe you a big debt about Harry Kane. also about the revenue that Harry Kane has generated for the club by getting them to the Champions League, getting them all the way to the final, win or not win. The money now is extraordinary.
Yeah.
Through the group again. That'll be, because they are through the group, aren't they?
Yeah.
In fact, they might even have, well, no, they can
play Leverkusen.
Bayern Munich, play Leverkusen. That's because of this season's revenue distribution, that's a 56 million half season already because of the, so Daniel?
No, he's but the kid's got to take all the credit. I mean, he's exceptional. I mean, for my liking, I was just talking earlier to someone who's a journalist in Newcastle, talking about Bentaleb because he's one of my boys.
Yeah. You loved his attitude, didn't he? You loved Bentaleb's attitude.
Loved him. I just said, listen, if his strength is his weakness, his emotion.
He cares too much.
Yeah, but I'd rather have it that way and rein him in than try and, because you're never going to get him to care more. So I'd rather saying, listen, stay at this, and that's why he falls out with people. But I don't mind him falling out with people. He fell out with Poch because he wasn't prepared to be second best to anyone. He wanted to play every week, and I think it's a good trait.
Yeah.
And obviously that's happened at Schalke as well. But in the meantime, the kid's earned a lot of money for Tottenham, played in the Champions League for Schalke a number of years, and now he's going to go up there and he'll be very good.
You bet that him and Steve Bruce will get on?
Yeah.
Because people, I don't know but Steve is A, very able as a coach, but B, he's, for all his affable, nice, or a winner, tough man. I think they'll get on, I think. I don't know if this is closing, but your time needs to be given back to you. And I wasn't going to ask you about these two, but given that I came here on the basis that I knew I was talking to somebody who knew about development, spotting, etc. This is just out of curiosity. Maybe you haven't seen enough of them, so please tell me if you haven't. But I watched Harvey Elliott the other day playing for Liverpool, and he knocked my socks off. And I got a tip about a year ago about Jude Bellingham, and I was told different gravy. And now I see this week there's rumours about big purchases and everything, but I was told that these two are very special. Have you seen them?
Yeah.
Is that snout right?
Yeah.
What do you think?
Harvey I've seen less of. Obviously Fulham and Liverpool, as everyone's seen, he's got a little bit about him.
Sure.
He needs to go and play. He ain't going to play there, unfortunately.
So already he should be following some of the path you've just outlined for Harry.
And it doesn't matter where. It matters that he plays. I had it time and time again when the agents used to come and say to me, yeah, but he can go to the Championship. And I said, well, no, I'm sending him to League One. But I'm sending him to this club, so I spoke to the manager. Yeah, but he can play in the Champ. I said, yeah, the last two loans are in the Champ, and every time I get there, I drive 300 miles up the motorway. He's sitting next to the manager when the kick-off time. No good. Play.
He must play.
He must play. We don't want him to play for Rochdale. We don't want him to play Leyton Orient in Harry Kane's case. We want him to play for Tottenham. And Liverpool want him to play for Liverpool. As long as they don't judge him when he's out there, as long as they realise it's a means to an end to come in, then he has to go and play. Because, don't get me wrong, if there's 10 games there for him next year at Liverpool, 10 games at Liverpool is better than 40 anywhere else. But if it's not there 10 games, if there's only 2.
And you think that his age, whatever, 17, the queue's probably too long for him to playing 10 games at Liverpool next season, probably.
They're going to go again, and they're going to strengthen again.
Yeah, they are. Particularly in his position,
because they can. Yeah. And I'd love to be in control of his pathway. It's a good problem to have, but the kid needs to obviously listen as well, because he's had a taste of playing for Liverpool now, and his cameos have been excellent. So, and it's a difficult sell. You know, when you got to go and speak to the parents and the agents who are even worse, and they're sitting there and you say, look, we're going to loan him out to
Orient
Crew up there. Oh, we're going to do that. But he's going to play every week, because it's going to be fantastic 6 months of his development, just getting used to. Physically, he's going to grow by it, because you get strength by playing. And they'll say, well, you're killing this boy.
And you say to them, Beckham at Preston, Frank in Wales.
I would always say, I care. And I say to the mum and dad, and I've done it millions of times, say, I know him better than you do. I spend more time with him than you do. I know him better as a footballer than you're ever going to know him.
Yeah.
You know him as your boy, right? But I'm telling you, I would not, and I care for him as much as you do, so I wouldn't lead him up the wrong path. I'm doing it because I think it's the right thing for him. And that's what you got to tell him. Bellingham, different. Bellingham's playing.
Yeah.
Great. He's lucky. He's lucky that he's at Birmingham. I'm saying it in the nicest possible way. If he's at Liverpool, he's not playing.
He's not playing, no.
Jude's 6'2". Mm-hmm. He will get stronger in his running. He's one-paced, right? He's not lightningly quick, but you don't have to be in the position where he plays. He has got ability, technical ability. The good thing for Birmingham fans out there is he loves Birmingham.
He's refused to go already, I think.
He loves them.
Yeah.
He's seen Barry from West Brom. West Brom go to Barca.
Yeah.
Louis Barry. Is it Louis Barry? Yeah.
Louis Barry, yeah, that's right. So I thought I was way back in Aston Villa. I thought about Gareth Barry. Louis Barry, yeah, went out under black cloud at West Brom.
Yeah.
There's a lot of bad chat about it. He's done 4 months at Barca's sitting in the third team, not really playing so much.
Yeah.
Probably hasn't advanced. Supports Villa. And his dad's a massive Villa fan, and obviously he's there now.
Yeah.
It's been a strange little operation.
But that's the problem. That's what they're talking about with Jude. Maybe getting him to go abroad so they don't have to pay the fee. But he's got to look at that pathway. It might not happen for Jude, but I would suggest you got to go. You got to make sure you go to. I mean, Dele Alli's a great example. Mm-hmm. So Dele Alli had a few options to go to. He picked the right one because he looked who the manager was in Pochettino, and he was fortunate he gave him an opportunity to play. Otherwise, that 150 games what he'd played from the age of 16 at MK Dons might have gone to waste if he's having 2 years on the sidelines
Sitting
not playing.
Somewhere, yeah.
Could easily have happened if he would have picked the wrong choice. He got lucky. Because it's in hindsight now, you can say, well, no, he was a world-class player. I mean, but you're not world-class. I'm as good as Lionel Messi when I'm sitting next to him in a stand. Makes no difference. So it's a difficult one. I love Jude. I really like him. Cause physically, I like him. The other boys, an acquired taste because of his size, but he's still got ability.
With the ball, loves him. His balance is good. He can do clever things.
He keeps the ponytail. It helps.
Well, somebody will one day come and unravel it for him, and Ginola won't be there for them. And maybe he can do what, partly thanks to your pushing Grealish, is beginning to do. So well done on that too.
Grealish is a different level.
Well done.
Grealish could play for any club in the world, anywhere.
Yeah, but I mean, he's never played at Pittodrie and Maddison has, so we have to say that matters is what he's aiming at, and we can agree to differ on that. But Grealish and Villa owe you a lot on that one too. All I'll say is that this has been fun. We've used up a lot of your time. I hope that when people are watching this, they're going, yeah, you want to be coach, manager, whatever. I think people should be going, I have to have Tim Sherwood at my club running the development because people that can do what you can do are very rare, and football spends a lot of money completely screwing it up. So get back and do what you're good at.
I love it. I love that development thing. I think the problem with it is that there's too many chiefs at the clubs now, and they've got other agendas, and rather than just doing what's best for the player and ultimately best for the club, they've all got their hands out. Yeah,
everybody watching knows what you're talking about. There's too many snouts in the trough. But sometimes when it's purified down to this level about talented football man, sees football player, helps him get the right path, it's the reason that we all still love the game. We don't love the game because of the big money or the big fanfare on the TV. It's football. We keep loving it, whatever warts it grows. So long may that last. Meantime, until you start doing that job again, thank you.
Pleasure.